वालेकुम
ख़वातीन व हज़रात, अब ऑनलाइन महफिल का आगाज़ करते हैं। बिलाशुबा हम महफिल का आगाज़ ऐसे कलाम से करते हैं जिसने करोड़ों इंसानों को दीनों दुनिया की लाजवाल नेमतों से नवाजा है। ये वो कलाम है जो अंदर की तारीकियों को मुनव्वर कर देता है। इस कलाम में वो कैफियत है कि जिसको सुनकर शज्जर व हजर भी झूमने लगते हैं। अब मैं जनाब हाफिज सैयद मीरान साहिबान खुनमरी साहब से गुजारिश करूँगा कि वो आए और तिलावत कुरान करीम से महफिल का आगाज़ करें। जनाब हाफिज सैयद मीरान साहिबान खुनमरी।
अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والنجم إذا هوى ما ضل صاحبكم وما غوى وما ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى علمه شديد القوى ذو مرة فاستوى وهو بالأفق الأعلى ثم دنا فتدلى فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى فأوحى إلى عبده ما أوحى ما كذب الفؤاد ما رأى أفتمارونه على ما يرى ولقد رآه نزلة أخرى عند سدرة المنتهى عندها جنة المأوى إذ يغشى السدرة ما يغشى ما زاغ البصر وما طغى لقد رأى من آيات ربه الكبرى أفرأيتم اللات والعزى
ألكم الذكر وله الأنثى تلك إذا قسمة ضيزى صدق الله العلي العظيم.
جزاکم اللہ.
ماشاء اللہ، بہت خوب. صاحبان خود میری بہت بہت شکریہ آپ کا.
جی شکریہ، جزاک اللہ.
معزز خواتین و حضرات، اب میں ایک ایسی معزز شخصیت کو آپ سے خطاب کرنے کے لیے مدعو کرنے جا رہا ہوں جو اس وقت ہمارے ساتھ آن لائن موجود ہے. وہ کوئی اور نہیں، ہمارے ہر دل عزیز عالی جناب سید یوسف تنویر صاحب، صدر FMS. جناب سید یوسف تنویر صاحب.
مامو جان انمیوٹ کرو.
کیمرہ بند کر دیا، سب کو بند ہوگا. پر یوسف تنویر
آواز
جی آواز آ رہی ہے. شروع کی.
میں فلاح مدویہ سوسائٹی کی جانب سے اس ٹیلی کانفرنس میں شریک سب خواتین و حضرات اور طلباء و طالبات کا تہہ دل سے استقبال کرتا ہوں. میں ڈاکٹر لطیف سید صاحب کا شکر گزار ہوں کہ آپ نے اس کانفرنس کو امریکہ کے شہر شکاگو سے خطاب کرنے کی ہماری دعوت قبول کی. موصوف کا تعلق حیدرآباد کے ایک علمی گھرانے سے ہے. آج کا یہ لیکچر اس لیے بھی بڑی اہمیت کا حامل ہے کہ اس کا انعقاد ایک ایسے وقت میں عمل میں آ رہا ہے جب عالمی طاقتیں امریکہ اور چین جیسے دنیا کی معیشت پر اپنی اجارہ داری قائم رکھنے اور قائم کرنے میں توانائیاں صرف کر رہی ہیں. یہ بھی سچ ہے کہ دنیا نے ماضی بعید اور قریب میں کئی ازمز کو اور نظام حکومتوں کو دیکھا اور پرکھا، لیکن متوازن نظام زندگی مہیا نہ کر پانے پر اور غرور و تکبر میں مبتلا ہو جانے کی وجہ کچھ ہی عرصے بعد عدم میں چلے گئے. آج جو مروجہ کیپٹلزم جاری ہے وہ بھی اپنی جاذبیت کھونے لگا ہے، کیونکہ ہم سمجھتے ہیں کہ یہ سماج میں عدم توازن قائم کر کے ایک غیر منصفانہ رویے کو فروغ دینے کا ذمہ دار بنا ہے. اسلام ہی ایک ایسا واحد مذہب یا طرز زندگی کا نام ہے کہ اس نے ہر فرد کو ہر شعبہ حیات میں انصاف ملنے کی ضمانت دی ہے. پچھلے تقریباً 100 سالوں میں جتنی سائنسی اور مادی ترقی دنیا نے کی، شاید ہی اتنی تیز رفتار ترقی کسی اور دور نے دیکھی ہوگی. لیکن یہ بھی ایک حقیقت ہے کہ اس ترقی سے ملکوں کی آبادی کے ایک بڑے حصے کو استفادے سے محروم رکھا گیا. آج کا حکمران طبقہ قدرتی وسائل کا ناجائز استعمال کر کے اپنی کمزوری اور نااہلی کو چھپانے کے لیے کہتا ہے کہ یہ آبادی کی زیادتی کی وجہ سے سکڑنے لگے ہیں. جبکہ خدائے بزرگ و برتر یہ اعلان کرتا ہے کہ ہم نے انسان کو پیدا کرنے سے 70,000 سال پہلے اس کے لیے ضروریات زمین پر پھیلا دی ہیں. تو پھر ارباب اقتدار اپنی انتظامی صلاحیتوں اور نظام تقسیم میں ناکامی کو قبول کیوں نہیں کرتے؟ کیوں انسان بھاگتی زندگی میں یہ بھول گیا ہے کہ ہم انسانی اقدار کو بھی کتنی دور چھوڑ چکے ہیں؟ اور وہ کون ہے؟ جس نے ہمیں ایسا کرنے پر مجبور کر دیا ہے۔ سب مسلمان بھی یہ کہنے پر مجبور کر دیے گئے ہیں کہ دور حاضر میں اسلام کی تعلیمات پر قائم رہتے ہوئے جینا بڑا محال ہو چکا ہے، بلکہ دوسرے معنی میں اسلام کو نعوذ باللہ فرسودہ مذہب سمجھا جانے لگا ہے۔ خیر، اس تعلق سے انشاءاللہ ڈاکٹر لطیف تفصیلی روشنی ڈالیں گے۔ میں آپ کو بتاتا چلوں کہ ادارہ فلاح-e-Mahdavia سوسائٹی کو یہ اعزاز حاصل ہوا ہے اور ہم گزشتہ کئی سال سے دنیا کے مختلف ممالک میں مقیم حضرات کے لیے مختلف موضوعات پر ماہرین کے لیکچرز کا کامیاب اہتمام کرتے آ رہے ہیں تاکہ قوم کے لوگ ان لیکچرز سے استفادہ حاصل کر سکیں۔ میں جناب سید علی احتشام الدین صاحب جوائنٹ سیکریٹری، جناب سید عتیق احمد صاحب میڈیا کوآرڈینیٹر و دیگر معاونین ادارہ فلاح-e-Mahdavia سوسائٹی کا شکریہ ادا کرنا چاہوں گا کہ ان کی جستجو، محنت اور ادارے سے دلی وابستگی کی بنا پچھلے تقریباً کئی سال سے ان آن لائن لیکچرز کا انعقاد عمل میں آ رہا ہے۔ آپ سب شرکائے کانفرنس کو یہ جان کر مسرت ہوگی کہ ادارہ گزشتہ 15-16 سال سے فروغ تعلیم کے سلسلے میں اپنے اسکالرشپ پروگرام کے ذریعے قوم کے ضرورت مند خاندانوں کی خدمت کا اعزاز حاصل کر رہا ہے۔ بہرحال پھر کسی وقت آپ کے روبرو ہونے کا موقع میسر ہو تو اس موضوع پر مزید بات ہوگی۔ اس موقع پر میں آپ کا مزید وقت لینا مناسب نہیں سمجھتا۔ ہم سب ڈاکٹر لطیف کو سننے کے لیے بے چین ہیں، جو انشاءاللہ اسلامی فائنانس کے تصور کو آپ کے سامنے رکھیں گے۔ لہٰذا مجھے اجازت دیجیے۔ خدا حافظ۔
بہت بہت شکریہ یوسف بھائی۔ Now I would like to introduce Dr. Lateef Syed alias Khalid, who started his teaching career as a lecturer at Anwar Uloom College in Hyderabad. And he continued to serve his academic by joining Robert Morris University in Chicago, and currently is teaching finance in Roosevelt University, Chicago. His research publication includes paper on Islamic finance and sukuk, and he is also associated with Mehdavia Islamic Center of Chicago as a general secretary. Today he is going to enlighten us on how the theory of modern Islamic finance system flourishes in this contemporary world and what role it can play in the international arena. He is delivering his speech on this topic on the demand of the students community and general audience. We hope that we will get acquainted knowledge with his speech today. Question and answer session will be start after this speech. Without waiting him for long, may I request Dr. Lateef Syed to share his knowledge with us.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. So I'm grateful to FMS, the president and other organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak on this important topic. The topic that is given to me is how the theory of modern Islamic finance system flourishes in this contemporary world and what role it can play in the international arena. I see this topic as a macroeconomic topic, but I will try to go into some of the basics of finance in the banking, in the Islamic banking and the investment side. Then eventually I will conclude on this, this topic, okay? So can you share the screen with me? آپ کے پاس ایک شیئر اسکرین کا بٹن ہوگا وہاں پہ، دیکھیے
جو
اس کو کلک کیجئے اور میرے نام پہ یا میں جا کر وہاں نظر آ رہا ہوں تو کہیں اس پہ یہ آپ کا اسکرین شاید شیئر کر دیا آپ نے.
آپ ہی کے پاس سے شیئر کیجیے.
اچھا ٹھیک ہے، میں دیکھ لیتا ہوں. नहीं वो नहीं इजाजत दे रहा है मुझे.
आप कर दिया.
Okay, ठीक है. आपको अब स्क्रीन नजर आ रहा है मेरा? PowerPoint. So I'm using the PowerPoint to give you some information on this Islamic finance. I'm just a student of Islamic finance. I'm not an expert on this subject, but I will try to share whatever information I have, and I will see if I can answer some of your questions. Now, Mohtaram Yusuf Tanveer Saab has talked about the two systems we have, the capitalism, the evils of the capitalism, and how we can have the Islamic economic system, which will be more balanced when compared to the other systems. So I will start my talk with a quote from Winston Churchill. And he said, "Capitalism is unequal distribution of wealth. Socialism is equal distribution of poverty." So using this quote, we can understand that neither pure capitalism nor pure socialism would be good for the society, because both have their own inherent evils. As Mr. Yusuf Tanveer has spoken earlier about the capitalism, where we have an imbalanced society, because there are some rich, there are some poor, and there is no way to reduce that or minimize the gap between those two. Similarly, socialism is a system where most of the things are being controlled by the government or the state, and the individuals have very little liberty in that case. Therefore, we feel that there is a possibility that we can present Islamic finance or Islamic economics as an, I would not say as an alternative, but at least it can flourish as a third force in the world economic system. So let's understand first what is Islamic finance. Now, a few things here. First of all, Islamic finance is as old as the birth of the Islam in Arabian Peninsula. And it is all based on Quran and Hadith. So therefore, it is such an important source, the divine source. Therefore, it is going to last until the end of this world. Okay, so could you mute people? I mean, if you can. Okay, so here is a quote from IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which says that Sharia law bans the sale and purchase of debt contracts, profit taking without real economic activity, as well as activities that are not considered halal. So therefore, there are certain prohibitions in Islam. So if you cannot do trading using those prohibitions, so you have to stay away from those prohibitions. What are those prohibitions? We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you look at the money, in Islam, money is used only as a medium of exchange. So you cannot use money directly to earn more money. So you cannot lend money and earn extra money on that, because that becomes interest or that becomes riba. No. So therefore, all the transactions that go through the Islamic finance should have some real economic activity, as it is defined here under the IMF definition. It says without real economic activity. So if it is not within the real economic activity, you cannot take that as a part of the Islamic finance. And in general, the Islamic finance promotes socially responsible investing. mostly you can call it as the ethical investing, mutual benefits, social justice. So all these benefits are there with the Islamic finance. And there is a famous hadith in which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is narrated to have said that all the conditions agreed upon by the Muslims are upheld, except a condition which allows what is prohibited or prohibits what is lawful. Meaning that suppose if two parties are making any contract, any agreement, so that can be upheld as long as that is within the with the permissible limits of the Islamic finance. So whatever agreement you make, so it does not give you any specifics on that. So it's a general guideline we get from the hadith. So to explain further on that, I just put an example here. Suppose if you enter into an agreement with someone to lend money payable after 5 years, and if both parties agree to the terms of the agreement, it will be upheld because there is no violation of Islamic Sharia. So now you are lending money and the other party says, I can pay you only after 5 years, and you agree to that. So as long as both parties agree, then it is upheld, it is lawful. So there's nothing wrong with that. But suppose if the agreement includes a condition that the borrower will pay an extra amount over and above the borrowed money, it will be a void transaction under Islamic law. Because here you're asking them to pay extra money, and that extra money you're collecting is interest. So you're giving them some money and then you're collecting some extra money. So therefore it is riba, therefore it is prohibited. I'll come with some other examples later, but just to go into the history of the Islamic banking. Research actually also showed, I did not put that point here, that the first sukuk is basically a Islamic bond, Islamic certificate, which is similar to the corporate bonds. That was issued under the Ottoman Empire, so I think somewhere in 1700s. So that was the first recorded transaction, you can say that under this period. But if you go into the 19th century, we find that the first bank was created in 1920, that is the Bank of Misr. Then also in 1930, we have the Arab Bank. I think these banks did not succeed. And then the modern Islamic finance, which basically starts in 1970s, we can say. So the first major development in this area is the creation of Islamic Development Bank. The purpose of the Islamic Development Bank is to promote the Islamic finance, the features of the Islamic finance throughout the world. As you know that Islamic Development Bank has 57 countries as its members. So they can expand the growth of Islamic finance throughout at least those 57 countries. It is created in 1973, and the first Islamic bank under this modern system actually is set up in 1975, that is called the Dubai Islamic Bank. And then we have some investment companies also known as Al Baraka. They first set up in London, and then after that they expanded their business investment company into other countries. So this is a brief history of Islamic banking. Now, coming to the prohibitions. What are the major prohibitions in Islam? So the first and foremost is the riba. It is called interest or usury. And I put some Quranic references to that. Those who are interested can go and look into that. For instance, it is 30, 39 means it is chapter 30 and verse 39 and so on. So there are so much of, several times it is said in Quran that interest is prohibited, it is the work of shaitan, and then you have to stay away from that. And at one point of time, it is said that it is as if you are waging a war against Allah and His Prophet. So it is so serious for us to look into that how we can avoid the interest-based transactions. But unfortunately, we are living in a world where the conventional finance system, which includes interest everywhere, it is very difficult at the moment to completely eliminate the interest from our day-to-day life, directly or indirectly. Because, for instance, if you look at the world economies, all the countries have the monetary policy and the fiscal policies. The monetary policies are controlled by their central banks. For instance, in the United States, the monetary policy is controlled by the Federal Reserve System. And the Federal Reserve System uses the target federal fund rate, which is the interest rate, to control the money supply in the economy. So therefore, every country uses the interest as a leverage to control their economic activity. If the economic activity is down, they reduce the interest rate so that the economic activity can go up. And if the economy is already having a robust activity, they try to control that by increasing the interest rate, because otherwise there will be a threat of inflation in the economy. So because of these things, we say that the interest factor is all there, which is beyond our individual control. So to what extent we can remove that, we have to talk about that. Now, what is riba? I'll come to that in a minute. Then gharar, the second important prohibition. It is called extreme uncertainty. Now you might be thinking that uncertainty is necessary in Islamic finance because we have to take risk. But here we are not talking about the regular uncertainty, but it is very extreme uncertainty. So we'll look into an example on that. And the third one is the maisir, which includes the intoxicants and the gambling. So any transaction that involves the purchase of securities of a company that deals with the intoxicants, or like the casinos for the gambling, etc., you cannot invest in those companies. Although you might be investing in equity securities like the stocks. But if you are investing in those companies, that will also become void, because Islam does not permit you to earn income from those kind of businesses. Now, what is riba then? Riba basically means an increase or some excess. So mostly we use the term riba or the interest for the loans. So either personal loans or you're borrowing money from a bank, so the bank charges some interest. But as a matter of fact, the riba can also be found in sale transactions sometimes. So, and also it was there in the barter system, so it was also prohibited even if you're doing any barter system. Now, another hadith which I would like to present here, which says that Prophet ﷺ said that the entitlement to the return on an asset relates to the risk of ownership. It means gain is justified only if the risk or responsibility is taken for the asset. So you can earn income only if you have ownership interest in that asset. So asset-based transaction is very important. So direct lending money and getting some extra money is not permitted. But suppose if you purchase an asset and if you are using that asset to earn income, that is permissible under Islamic law. So therefore, it is very important that the transaction should go through some kind of an asset base. Here I am trying to present two examples because in Surah Baqarah, verse 275, it's a part of the verse that says, while God has made buying and selling lawful and usually unlawful. That is, you can do the trade. By doing the trade, you can earn income. But by giving the, lending the money, you cannot earn any extra money. So here is the two examples. So the first example relates to riba. So suppose if you give a loan of $10,000 to B, A is giving this 10,000 to B. B promises to pay back 12,000 at the end of the year. So this 2,000 extra money which you are getting, or A is getting here in this example, is basically a riba. It is prohibited. As a Muslim, we cannot earn this income because money cannot earn extra money. And there is no other asset is involved in this transaction. But on the other hand, let's suppose you purchase gold worth $10,000. And after 1 year, you sold the gold at market price of $12,000. The price has increased. Here, this $2,000 that you're earning is a profit, it is not an interest. Because you purchased an asset and you are selling the asset after some time at a market price. Now, there is a possibility in the trade that the price of the gold may go down. So rather than selling at 12,000, it's quite possible that you might be selling the asset for only 8,000 or 9,000. So in that case, you are incurring a loss. So therefore, the risk factor is there in a trade, whereas in a riba or in this lending transaction, there is no risk factor because regardless of what B is doing with that $10,000, whether he's earning or losing money on that $10,000 venture, he has to pay you back $12,000. Meaning that regardless of what happened to the other party, you are going to collect that $2,000. Therefore, it is not permissible in Islam. Now, interestingly, not only the Islamic Sharia prohibits interest, but if you look at the Judaism and Christianity, they also prohibited interest at that time. For instance, here I have some quotes for you. So under Judaism, Israelites were forbidden to demand any increase in the principal amount of the sum lent to the transactions among themselves. Although interest could be charged in dealing between Israelites and Gentiles. Now, this is very interesting. What this statement says that Jews cannot charge interest to other Jews, but they can charge interest to non-Jews or those non-believers from their point of view, those who are not Jews. Gentile generally used for the Christians. Similarly, it is also said in the Old Testament, do not charge your brother interest, whether on money or food or anything else that may earn interest. You may charge a foreigner interest, but not a brother Israelites. Similarly, there is another quote here from the Exodus. This is also the Old Testament. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is poor, you must not act as a creditor to him. You are not to charge him any interest. So in all these statements, we saw that Judaism also prohibits interest, but to the extent that you cannot charge interest to your own people like the Jews, but you can charge interest to others. Now, interestingly, in these days, if we see the fatwas or the Islamic rulings, where some scholars say that if Muslims are collecting interest from non-Muslim, that is permissible. But if they should not collect the interest from the other Muslims, but they can collect interest from the other people, like people of other communities or other faiths. I don't know, I'm not an Islamic scholar, therefore I don't want to comment on that, but I mean, my personal feeling is that this is not a true Islamic spirit. When it says Islam, because it does not say anything in Quran or Hadith that you can charge interest to others. So therefore, I personally feel that the scholars, those who are giving this kind of interpretation, I think we should look into that, and our scholars should talk about that whenever they get a chance on that. Similarly, in Christianity, there is a quote here, it's a saying by Christ, lend freely, hoping nothing thereby. So this statement is taken by Christianity in the early days as a condemnation of the interest. So therefore, I think we can say that if you take all the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, in all these three religions, the interest is condemned, it is prohibited. But what happened, particularly in Christianity, if you look at the last line here, that the last act condemning all interest on as contrary to God's law was passed in 1571, meaning that after 1571 in England, they relaxed the rules, meaning that if they want to earn interest, they can earn interest. So interest is not that condemned at that time. So what I'm trying to say that because Islam is a religion which basically starts from Adam al-Islam and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu is the last in the chain of the prophets. So therefore the deen is the same. That's the reason why we can see these examples even in Judaism and also in Christianity. The next prohibition is called gharar. Gharar basically means that you are entering into a contract to purchase something which is not existent. That's why it is called extreme uncertainty. And the good example. Okay. Can you mute them? Okay, so in this, the best example of this could be like this. So saying A sells B the harvest of the farm from the next crop. Next crop means the crop that is going to come next year. Right now you don't have that crop existing, but you are selling that. So this is an unlawful transaction under Islamic finance, because that asset or whatever you are selling or whatever that is not existent at the moment. Therefore, it is considered as gharar, the extreme uncertainty. The reason being that the harvest or the crop mostly depends upon the weather conditions, the rain, and so therefore it is not completely within the control of individuals. So therefore you cannot sell something on which you don't have any control, and it is also non-existent. Is there any way you can mute them? Now the third type of prohibition is called maisir. Maisir basically includes the intoxicants, the game of chance like the gambling, etc. So all these things are basically prohibited in Islam. So therefore, we have to stay away from all these three things. So riba, gharar, and maisir. Here is the quote. Basically, this is the verse of the Quran, which is chapter 5, verse 90. Those who are interested can go and read that later. Now we are going to look at quickly some of the Islamic banking products. What products are being offered? If you go to the bank in conventional banking system, you can borrow money, you can do any kind of other transactions. But under the Islamic banking system, there are certain specific type of products they develop. And most of these banks, what they did basically, they have Islamic Sharia board with them. So the financial engineering system, or financial engineers we can call it, they create the product, a financial instrument, and they offer that to what you can say the Islamic Sharia board. And Islamic Sharia board look into that under the Islamic law, and then they say, okay, yes, this is permissible or which is prohibited. So therefore, most of these banks use the, what you can say, the Islamic Sharia board, and they certify that, yes, this product is in accordance with the Islamic Sharia, something like that. You know? So now let's quickly look into some of them. The first is called Murabaha. What is Murabaha? In a Murabaha, what happens that this is generally used in the real estate financing. Even in US, some of the banks are offering this kind of transaction, real estate finance. So let's suppose you want to buy a house. So let's suppose the house cost you $300,000. So under the conventional finance, you go and you pay some down payment, you go to the bank and take the loan for the rest of the money. So let's suppose you're borrowing $250,000 from bank to purchase the house. So on the $250,000, you are going to pay interest, and those loans could be for 15 years, 30 years, etc. And throughout the period, you are paying a part towards the interest and part towards the principal. So it's purely an interest-based transaction. So what Islamic banks does here, they basically created a product called Murabaha, where if you want to buy a house, the bank will purchase that house. So initially, you don't have to purchase. The bank will purchase the house, and they will sell you at an increased price with the agreement that you are going to pay that amount in certain number of years. Now, some people think that, okay, what is the difference between the conventional finance and the real estate finance? Because both are same. In case of conventional finance, you are simply borrowing money to purchase the house and paying almost the same amount. And in a real estate finance, you are purchasing the house from the bank, and the bank is selling you at a higher price. No? Yeah, it's a gray area, no doubt. But at the same time, you know, I told you the hadith in the beginning, which says, it is narrator have said that all the conditions agreed upon by the Muslims are upheld, meaning that suppose if the bank says, okay, this $250,000 worth of house or whatever it is, we are selling you for $350,000, and you are going to pay that amount, say, in 30 years. Now, as long as both parties agree to the transaction that you are ready to purchase that house for $350,000. So it is I think it is a valid transaction, although it's a gray area. But why? Because the asset is there in between. And also, as long as you agreed to pay that price of $350,000, meaning that you are agreed to purchase that house for $350,000. So therefore, this can be taken as a transaction where you're trying to take what you can say the guideline from the hadith, where if both parties agree and if the transaction is within the framework of the Islamic finance or Islamic Sharia, it is valid. So therefore, that is basically the Murabaha. Again, there is some controversy over that. Some people feel that it is almost same as the real estate finance, the conventional finance. Therefore, it is not permissible. So it's debatable, and I think the Islamic scholars should come out with some consensus on that. The second one is called the Mudaraba. In the second type of contract, what happens, it is basically two parties involved. One party is the financier here, the other party is the entrepreneur. And one party provides the capital, the finance, the other party runs the business as an entrepreneur. Now what happens, if they have any profit, they will share the profit as agreed. So whatever with the ratio they have, they will take that profit. But if there is a loss, the loss will be borne by the financer. The financer will take that loss. Then the question is, what is the loss for the entrepreneur? The loss for the entrepreneur, according to those who came out with these products, they say that the loss for the entrepreneur is the reputation, the goodwill. So you are losing your goodwill if you're not doing the business correctly. Therefore, no other person will come back to you later and do some other transaction with you because you prove yourself inefficient in that case. So that's called the mudaraba. The next one is called the istisna. In the istisna, what happens, I told you about the gharar earlier. In the gharar, one of the important conditions is that you cannot enter into transaction if the asset does not exist, But there are some slight exemptions here, So in istisna, what happens, you are entering into the contract to get something manufactured, meaning that the final product is not available at the time, but you are entering into the contract and the manufacturer will manufacture according to your choice, and then they will deliver the goods. This is permissible, and it does not require you to make any advance payment for that. So this transaction is considered as part of the Islamic finance. The next one is salam. In this transaction, which is generally used in the agricultural trade, so let's suppose there is a small farmer, poor person, who cannot purchase the seeds and who cannot have cultivated the land without any money. So therefore, you are giving him some advance money. You're saying that, okay, this is the money you take, you purchase the seeds, do whatever necessary, and when the crop comes, I'm going to purchase that from you. Now, this is one of the ways you can help the farmers to go to the bank and borrow money. So on that, which they have to pay the interest, So that's called the salam. And then we have the musharaka, which is basically a partnership or joint venture transaction, where both the parties contribute the capital, both the parties may run the business, and both the parties. 80s and 90s, we saw that when this, because most of the Islamic banking, the modern Islamic banking and the finance is started in 1970s. So we see that in 1980s and 90s, most of many institutions are developed. They are working hard, no doubt, to promote the Islamic finance, Islamic banking. At least, they have some awareness right now in many countries. At one point of time, when I presented a paper on the sukuk, there were some members in the audience who did not have any imagination that anything books in US, we have a chapter on bonds, one of the types of bonds. So they are introducing the Islamic finance into their financial literature. There are so many banks in US and Europe. They are actually responsible for creating these kind of products. Make sure you're board. So they are trying to set up their own accounting system. They have the financial markets system, regulation, etc. Naturally, it cannot be as developed as the European or the American system they have. But eventually it takes time for them to, the potential that the Islamic finance can grow and become a third force in the world economy. Now, one of the major contributions of the Islamic finance book is, we call it as the Islamic bond or Islamic certificate. So on the one side, we have the, if you purchase a corporate bond, your maturity, you'll get back your money, the par value or the face value. So there is not much risk involved unless that company goes bankrupt. And even if the company goes bankrupt, they have a hierarchy of bankruptcy payments. So the bondholders will get their payment before anything is paid to the equity holders. So therefore, their risk is very, very low. So that is the conventional banking. Now, in Islamic banking, they introduced the sukuk. Sukuk is similar to the certificates or bond, but here the sukuk holder will not get the interest payment. What the sukuk holder is getting is an ownership in the assets of that company. Again, as I said earlier, in one of the hadith, Rasulullah said that if you can earn something if you have the ownership in that asset, or if you take the responsibility or the liability of that asset yourself. So then only you can earn some income from that asset. They are similar to the corporate bonds or the conventional bonds, which is not permitted, even though they gave the name of the sukuk. But if that does not meet the requirement of ownership of asset, we cannot call it as a transaction under the Islamic finance. So in a sukuk, one of the important features is that whatever you are investing in the asset of that corporation. And then whatever you earn from that could be in the form of a profit, or it could be like a lease rent. Now, sukuk are initially, that is in the 90s and 2000, in the early 2000, we can say that the sukuk transactions were very much in billions of dollars, and most of the sukuk are AAA rating, AA rating, that is, they are considered as sound financial systems. Most of the, like the Citibank had a sukuk index created in 2006 or 2004 at the time. So recently what happened, if you look at the, for this COVID-19 situation, IDB, the Islamic Development Bank, has issued some sukuk. And they are using the sukuk money to spread to those 57 countries, the member countries, to for the health issues, for helping the, what you can say, small businesses because of the loss of business they have. So they are trying to help them. And from 2018 to 2019, in that period, the sukuk issues have increased by 36%, meaning that sukuk are still considered as a viable source of investment for the people. They can invest in this sukuk. Now, naturally, in this 2020, because of this pandemic, there is a lot of reduction in the sukuk activity, just like any other economic activity in the world. Now, these sukuks are now being issued in Asian countries as well as in the African countries. Now, sukuk is particularly very important tool for project financing. So, we talk about public-private partnerships, because these days, government are not the welfare states anymore. So they say that let the private parties come, private companies come and create something and earn money on that. Or sometimes the government also become a partner in that project. So in that case, the private company or even the government can issue the sukuk to raise funds, and they can complete the project. Say construction of an airport, construction of a stadium, or whatever they want to do with the infrastructure project, they can do that. So sukuk could be a very viable tool for them to do that. Now, the question is whether the sukuk or the Islamic finance is restricted within like the Muslim countries, like the Middle Eastern countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc. Not necessarily, because we have examples where Europe has also came forward with sukuk issues. So the first sukuk issue was issued by a state government of Germany in 2004. That was the first example of sukuk being issued in Germany. Then Britain also issued sukuk, and this is the sovereign sukuk, meaning that this is issued directly by the government of UK in 2014. Now in US, there are some mutual funds available for the people, those who would like to invest. And Saturna Capital, I'm just giving only one example here. There are some other companies also. So Saturna Capital provides Amana Participation Fund. So if you're investing in this participation fund, basically you're investing in tens of different sukuks. So it is considered as Sharia compliant because of the transaction. And also, the Saturna also offers two other mutual funds, which are also what you can say Sharia compliant. Those are equities mutual funds. So what basically they do, they select the stocks of those companies which are doing a business which is not prohibited under the Islamic law. Like for instance, they might be doing, they're selecting the company like in the technology sector, pharmaceuticals, etc. They will not have any security from the banks, from casinos, or those kind of things which are exclusively prohibited under the Islamic law. So these are the, this is the information here. Here is some example of the differences between the conventional bonds and the sukuk. No? So sukuk, as I said earlier in the beginning, that it's also considered as an ethical investing, you know, because it has some rules and regulations which are more ethical in nature when compared to the conventional finance. So in the regular bonds or the corporate bond in the conventional finance, you are lending money for interest. But in the sukuk, you are earning interest free, which is the rent. You are earning the lease rent or the profit. It's a debt financing primarily. It's a debt financing. But in the case of sukuk, it is an equity financing because, as I said earlier, you are investing in the assets of the company. So you are getting the ownership, part ownership. So therefore, it is basically an equity financing. So debt financing is interest-based, and here debt financing must be asset-based. Whatever you are doing is asset-based here. Asset-based is very important because that's how you get the ownership. Here there is no ownership, and here you have the ownership benefit. So these are some of the, what you can say, differences between the regular corporate bond and the sukuk. Those are the two things. Islamic development, earlier I told you about that, the Islamic Development Bank pledged $2.3 billion in March 2020 for strategic preparedness to help combat the health and socioeconomic impact arising from COVID-19. So it means that the Islamic Finance or Islamic Development Bank is working, no doubt, to provide financial assistance to those 57 countries. No? That can be expanded. Suppose if someone sees that the Islamic Development Bank does such work, then probably the IMF and other World Bank will take the example of that, and probably they will also go to some African countries and provide necessary help. Now, if you look at not only the Islamic Development Bank, but also the Asian Development Bank. If you look at the Asian Development Bank, it says that the sukuk or Islamic finance is growing double digits in those Asian countries. These Asian countries include Afghanistan, what you can say, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and other countries. No? So it's growing there. So 20% of the Islamic finance from the Asian Islamic finance also extending its roots to Thailand, China, Bangladesh is already there, India. I don't know if it is growing well in India or not at this moment. At one point of time, Alamin, I think, finances, they used to offer the ijara transactions long ago, like 30, 35 years ago. But right now things are different in that country. Also, when you look at the funds available with those, like the Middle Eastern countries or the sovereign funds we have, data available right now. So if you look at only these four top countries, so if you look at the 10 top countries with the sovereign funds, these four are Middle East. They have dollars in this sovereign. It was in prices, but these must properly increase. Now, in 2008, in some areas in US, because of the relaxation of the rules by the banks, reckless behavior, you can call it, to give loans to the people that we generally call as the subprime. So they got the loans. Suppose if a person is eligible to get a loan of 200,000, they even gave them a loan for 250,000. They say the housing prices will never go down, so therefore you can easily pay that when you sell the property. But that did not happen like that. The property values went down when the market crashed, the real estate market crashed. And what basically they did, they used what you can say, the derivatives, the mortgage-backed securities, we call it as MBS, to sell these securities throughout the world. So the problem that was confined to US has spread out throughout the world because of those securities, the mortgage-backed securities. And because people have defaulted on the loans, the security values came down, and there is a huge loss among the banks. But I think in 2008 itself, some 140 banks went bankrupt in US. So that was such a severe, what you can say, drawback of the reckless behavior of the banks and financial institutions. This is just another example of the failure of the capitalism. Because at one point of time, when we have the derivatives, the US authorities used to say, particularly the chairman of the Federal Bank, Federal Reserve at that time, Alan Greenspan, there is no need for any control. There is no need of any regulations. Market will correct itself. But that did not happen. So that's the reason why we saw huge losses among the investors. And as a matter of fact, most of the people lost money through their pension funds, retirement accounts, etc. Now, as a result of that, Vatican came out in 2009 and gave this statement. So basically, Vatican says that the ethical principles on which Islamic finance is based may bring back banks closer to their clients and to the true spirit which should mark every financial service. This is from the newspaper of the Vatican. It means that the Vatican also recognizes the importance and the ethical behavior of Islamic finance. So I think this is a very important statement, particularly it came from when it comes from the Vatican. Now, as far as the growth of Islamic finance is concerned, now we see that there are so many indices available. So it is not like just individual securities, but there are so many indices created to monitor the performance of different Sharia compliant securities in the market. Dow Jones is there, Islamic Market Index, Credit Suisse is there, Dubai Sharia Hedge Fund is there, FTSE is there, Jakarta, which is from Malaysia, and so on. And as I said earlier, for the Sukuk, Dow Jones and Citibank created a Sukuk index at that time. I don't know how it is working right now. Now, so far, if you look at the Islamic finance, it is mostly on the higher side. That is billions of dollars in transactions, but it has failed to reach to the poor. As a matter of fact, I did a paper a few years ago on the Islamic cooperatives, meaning that we can use the Islamic cooperatives to reach out to the poor people in rural areas. We can provide them funds through the Islamic finance principles. And that will help, particularly like the Islamic Development Bank, etc., to reach out to the poor. Because if you look at the population data, today, more than 50% of the Muslim population lives in Africa, and most of them are poor. And in 2013, the World Bank says that 2.5 billion working age adults do not have access to the formal financial services, meaning that they don't have services. They can't go to the bank to get the money. They do not do any transactions. They don't have any bank accounts, etc. So what happens then? If they are small traders, if they are farmers, so they have to go to the lenders to borrow money by mortgaging their own land, mortgaging their own business, like that. So Islamic finance, if they want to be more inclusive, they have to think about going for the Islamic cooperatives. In that paper, I presented a model of the Islamic cooperatives and how they can use it for this purpose. And as a matter of fact, when these cooperatives started in West, particularly in European countries, it was basically the Catholic Church which came forward to help the poor through the cooperatives. So we can use the model of the Western countries, as well as India also has some cooperatives. So we can use those models and we can create the Islamic cooperatives based on the Islamic principles. Now the challenges. What kind of challenges we have? Now, one important challenge which I already talked about is the inclusiveness. Right now, we don't have the inclusiveness. Suppose if you're a poor person, you don't have access to the Islamic finance. So therefore, it is important that they use the microfinance system to reach out to the poor, help them, not only the Muslims, but also if suppose in a particular area where you have the Muslim population, you can provide those services to all other individuals, because Islam basically offers you to help others as well, along with the Muslim population. In addition to that, there are some deficiencies because, Islamic finance comes from Islamic Sharia or Islamic fiqh. Now, some of the products we see today, those products were not there 1400 years ago. So therefore, you have to interpret. You have to come with some ijtihad. Now, in that case, what's happening, there are some differences of opinion among the scholars, Islamic scholars, about what is permissible and what is not. So what should happen is, there should be, probably they might be doing that, but there should be an international forum where they should discuss and debate and come out with some consensus, rather than having different opinions and giving, for instance, Malaysia may have different rules and Middle Eastern countries may have different rules for that. Also, there is a lack of standardization when they are creating these products. As I said earlier, that lately they are issuing some sukuk which are not completely compatible with Islamic finance. So if you have some kind of a standardized structure, probably you can avoid that kind of situation. And in any system, if you are developing, it takes years to have some streamline in that process. So therefore, it will take a few more years, maybe a few more decades, when you can say that Islamic finance would be a powerful third force in the world economy. And they should not forget about having the rule of equity and justice, mutual help, human value, cooperation. So these are the basic tenets of Islamic finance, and that should always be there in that case. So I think I did my job, and if you have any questions, I'll see if I can answer that. You can take the screen if you want, yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Khalid,
Yes.
आपके पास जूम पे क्वेश्चन है कुछ, उस पे आप आपके चार्ट, ग्रुप चार्ट पे।
एक मिनट।
स्क्रीन शेयरिंग कैंसिल कर दो। स्क्रीन शेयर कैंसिल कर दीजिए आप
जी।
स्क्रीन शेयर जो है ना उसको
हाँ, कैंसिल कर रहा हूँ।
और आप ग्रुप चार्ट में क्वेश्चन है आपके पास, राइट साइड पे देखिए।
हाँ, देख रहा हूँ। Okay. Okay, now let me read that question and see if I can answer that. One question says, I wanted to ask about the Islamic business that allows Muslims to purchase a home or obtain a mortgage without riba. However, this organization does obtain the riba through other ways, but not necessarily through the traditional interest. It's not called or collected as interest. Basically, it's a gray area. Is this still halal? Now, remember that I think, the question of halal and haram, I think the Islamic scholar should answer that question, but I can only just give my opinion, okay? The point here is, suppose if someone is borrowing without interest, say from the Islamic bank for purchase of the house, so then what basically the Islamic bank does, let me explain you that also. There are some financiers they have. Those give money to the Islamic bank, and the Islamic bank give money to purchase the house, and you can get the house from them. So whatever you are paying to the Islamic bank, they will share a part of the profit with that financier. So I don't think that they are paying the interest to the other party, first of all. And the second possibility is that some of the Islamic, the real estate transactions in US, they are also connected with the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. In US, we have two large quasi-government organizations for the home financing that is created by the charter, meaning that they provide the liquidity to the bank, because if the bank goes on lending money or giving money to purchasing house and giving the houses, they don't have the liquidity available to them. So therefore, those things are purchased by some other organization and provide the liquidity to the Islamic bank. Okay, the question here is, can we do stock trading of Jais companies? And also there is a new concept of option trading. Okay, you can purchase the stocks because stock pays dividends. However, you should not purchase the stocks of those companies which are involved in say for instance, the banks. The major source of income for banks is interest in the conventional banks. So that is the interest. So therefore, you should not purchase the stocks of a bank. You should not purchase the stocks of companies doing the gambling business or those who are producing the intoxicants. But otherwise, in other companies, you can invest. But again, the question is, those companies might be borrowing money on interest to raise money for their businesses. So therefore, it is very difficult to completely make yourself free of interest. So that indirect way, they are borrowing money, but as far as is concerned, you are investing in that company. that company is doing the business and paying you dividends. So I think that is okay for you. But again, the best thing is you should ask this question to some Islamic scholar. As far as the option trading is concerned, option trading, what happens in option trading, suppose, say for instance, stock options. So you want to purchase 100 shares of a particular stock on a future date. So right now you are paying only some nominal amount. You're not paying the full price. So you are paying only nominal amount. And before the expiry of the option, if you want, you can exercise your option, but you feel that you are not going to benefit from that, you just let the option expire. So these transactions are highly risky and very unpredictable. In my opinion, again, I'm not a very scholar in this area, but I feel that option trading is not something which is completely within the purview of the Islamic finance. Scholars have to look into that. Okay, which Islamic system we can find in India? I doubt we don't have any Islamic system as far as the economy is concerned there, except that there may be some companies doing the ijara transactions. Actually, the Reserve Bank of India should look into that, and there, at one point of time there was discussion that they are going to allow the Islamic finance products there, but now I don't think it is going to happen. Okay, the next question is, can you explain difference between gharar and salam? Okay, that's a good question. Again, it's very, very close. You know, gharar means you are entering into a transaction where the product or the asset does not exist at all. I gave you the example of the harvest, the crop of the next year, no? Not current year, but the next year. But salam means you are giving money to the, what you can say, the farmer, saying that, okay, utilize this money, purchase the seeds and do whatever necessary and get some agricultural product. And then you purchase from them, okay? So what you are giving in salam is the advance money. But in gharar, you are purchasing something, fixing the price right itself. So there is some slight difference between these two. And gharar is prohibited, whereas salam is permitted in Islamic finance. Okay. Okay, it says it is allowed Islamically to take part in pension schemes offered at companies. Particularly in the US, what happens, your pay package include a part of the money being contributed by your employer to some 401k plans. I think that's what you have earned. So therefore, it is your money, you can have that. But again, you know, when it comes to the question of permissibility, etc., I think it is always good to ask some Islamic scholar, but this is only my opinion. Okay, it says, how do you view the interest given by bank on savings account in India? This is around 5 to 6%. Can we consider this as nullification of inflation? Any interest paid by the bank is riba, and it is haram. You should not take it. Now, at least in the United States, we have checking account system where you can tell the bank that I don't want the interest, and so don't credit interest to my account. And they oblige you. They will follow your instructions. In India, I don't think that's possible. So in the absence of that, scholars have different opinion that you take that money, whatever interest you are getting from that bank, and then you distribute that without the expectation of any sawab on that. That's one option you have. Secondly, if you can have a interest-free account like the checking account, there, it is better to open a checking account rather than having a saving account. But most of the individuals cannot open the, what you can say, the checking account there, I think in India. So therefore, it is somewhat difficult there. So in the absence of any rule, you can just leave that money with the bank or take it and just distribute that. Again, that's the opinion of the scholars that what I have heard. So I'm just passing on that information to you. Okay, then it says, is bank interest not the balancing force to maintain strength of currency? Regardless of, basically you're talking about the inflation, no? So regardless of whatever be the reason the bank is paying, as I said earlier, money cannot earn extra money. So therefore, you have to go through some asset if you want to earn income. Therefore, anything, whatever they are paying, regardless of whether they are paying to overcome that inflation fears, etc., that is riba, that is interest. Okay, another question is that as a Sunni Mehdhavi, we are trying to follow all the Sunnah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Imamana, and how can we manage our financial matters in India for development? Again, I know that borrowing money is prohibited, so you have to basically follow those three principles, you know, riba, gharar, and maisar. Avoid these three things, and then whatever you can do for your business, you can do the business with that. Again, I'm not an expert on the Islamic Sharia, but look into that. Make your own personal judgment sometimes, or ask the scholars. You know, I don't know about what kind of products are available at the time in India, so therefore I cannot fully answer your question. Okay, other question is, would you please share your contact for financial advice? The organizers can give my contact, but again, I'm not an expert, so therefore I cannot give you any financial advice, I think. You know, when you learn something, when you have some, knowledge or education, that makes you more, what you can say, there is a famous quote, so let me give you that quote. William Durant says that 60 years ago, I knew everything. Today, I know nothing. Education is the progressive realization of our own ignorance. So if you know something at that time, when you start something, you thought that, okay, I know everything, you know? But when you go deep into the knowledge, you realize that you don't know many things, you know. So therefore, I'm not an expert, but if you have any questions, you can send me. I'll try to see if I can answer your question. I don't think we have any other question here. Shall we conclude then? Okay, then here is one question. I don't know if you can answer this. What is Islam's stand on insurance, particularly health, vehicle, home? Vehicle insurance mandatory in most countries. You know, these like the vehicle insurance or health insurance, particularly in the United States, those are required. You cannot avoid that. That's not within your control. So you have to have that. As far as the life insurance is concerned, generally we said that life insurance is not permitted in Islam. Why? Because it is against the tawakkul. रहन का घर लेना कैसा है? I think you please ask this question to some Islamic scholar. So shall we conclude then? I think
यही क्वेश्चन है. एक क्वेश्चन है. क्वेश्चंस हो गए खालिद?
हाँ हो गए, इसमें नहीं है.
मोअज़्ज़िज़ हाज़िरीन महफिल, आज की इस महफिल के इख्तिताम से पहले मेरा ये खुशगवार फरीज़ा है कि मैं आप तमाम का शुक्रिया अदा करूं. मैं डॉक्टर सैयद लतीफ़ खालिद का ममनून मशकूर हूं कि इन्होंने मसरूफियात के बावजूद इस मौजू पर रोशनी डाली, और ख़ास तौर पर मैं हमारे सदर मोहतरम का शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहता हूं. वो इसलिए कि इस वक्त ऑस्ट्रेलिया में तकरीबन 3 बज रहे हैं. वो हमको इस टाइम देकर हम तमाम उनके मशकूर हैं कि आपने टाइम हमको दिया. और जनाब इनायतुल्लाह खान साहब और खालिद सैयद सुभान उन्मीरी साहब का भी बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ. अल्लाह हाफिज़.
आप तमाम का बेहद शुक्रिया, आपने मुझे मौका दिया आज के इस प्रोग्राम में शरीक होने का और अपने राय देने का. और अगर किसी मसले में मैंने कोई गलत बयानी से काम लिया हो तो, या कोई बात जो गलत कह दी हो तो मुझे माफ़ फरमाएं, और अल्लाह ताला भी मुझे माफ़ फरमाए.
खुदा हाफिज़.
शुक्रिया. खुदा हाफिज़.